Welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we discuss a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is January 24th. On this day, in 1989, one of America's most infamous serial killers, Ted Bundy, was executed in Florida's electric chair. Bundy confessed to murdering at least 30 women during the 1970s, but experts believe the number could actually be much higher. His crimes left a trail of devastation across multiple states, and his story remains a chilling reminder of how dangerous charm and manipulation can be. Today, we'll delve into his heinous crimes, the investigations that spanned multiple states, and the legacies of his victims, whose lives were stolen far too soon. Let's get started. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24th, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, under circumstances that would shape much of his life. His birth was shrouded in family secrets. He was raised believing that his mother was his sister and his grandparents were his parents. When Bundy discovered the truth as a teenager, it deeply upset him and likely contributed to emotions that would later manifest in unspeakable ways. Outwardly, Bundy appeared to be the picture of success. He was intelligent, charming, and ambitious. He earned a degree in psychology, volunteered at a crisis hotline, and even pursued law school. But this polished exterior hid a predator who was methodically planning violent crimes. Bundy's targets were young women, often ones who resembled his first serious girlfriend. This woman had rejected Bundy, which left a lasting wound on his psyche. Before we get into Bundy's crimes, I want to talk about the women whose lives he stole. Each one was loved, and each one had her own dreams and potential. Linda Ann Healy, 21, was a student at the University of Washington who worked as a radio announcer. She vanished from her bedroom on January 31st, 1974, marking the start of Bundy's killing spree. Donna Gail Manson, 19, a free spirit and musician, disappeared on March 12, 1974, while walking to a campus concert at Evergreen State College. Susan Elaine Rancourt, 18, a biology student at Central Washington University, vanished on April 17, 1974, after attending a meeting about campus life. Roberta Kathleen Parks, 22, a sociology student at Oregon State University, disappeared on May 6, 1974, after leaving her dorm for coffee. Brenda Carol Ball, 22, was last seen on June 1, 1974, leaving a tavern in Burien, Washington. Known for her lively spirit, Brenda loved music and adventure. Georgianne Hawkins, 18, a University of Washington journalism major, disappeared on June 11, 1974, while walking to her sorority house. Janice Ann Ott, 23, and Denise Marie Nasland, 19, were abducted on July 14, 1974, from Lake Sammamish State Park. Witnesses recalled a man with a cast asking for help, a calculated ruse that Bundy often used. Bundy's terror continued as he moved between states. Nancy Wilcox, 16, vanished near Salt Lake City, Utah on October 2, 1974. She was a bright, cheerful high school student. Melissa Ann Smith, 17, the daughter of a Midvale, Utah police chief, disappeared on October 18, 1974. Her case deeply shook the community. Laura Ann Aim, 17, disappeared on Halloween night, 1974, after a party in Lehi, Utah. Debbie Kent, 17, was last seen on November 8, 1974, leaving a school play in Bountiful, Utah. Bundy's later victims included Karen Campbell, 23, a nurse who disappeared on January 12, 1975 from a hotel in Aspen, Colorado. Julie Cunningham, 26, who vanished on March 15, 1975 in Vail, Colorado. Denise Lynn Oliverson, 25, who disappeared on April 6, 1975 in Grand Junction, Colorado. Lynette Dawn Culver, 12, abducted on May 6, 1975 from her school in Pocatello, Idaho. Susan Curtis, 15, who vanished on June 28, 1975 from Brigham Young University. And finally, Bundy's last known victims. Lisa Levy, 20, and Margaret Bowman, 21, were murdered during his January 15, 1978 attack on the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Kimberly Leach, 12, was abducted and murdered on February 9, 1978. Kimberly had dreamed of becoming a teacher. Each of these women and girls had stories, dreams, and futures ahead of them, and it's crucial to keep their memories alive as we examine this man's despicable crimes. Bundy's cross-state killing spree made it incredibly challenging for law enforcement to connect the cases. Young women began disappearing in Washington, but it wasn't until witnesses at Lake Sammamish State Park described a man named Ted with a cast asking for help that investigators had their first real lead. When Bundy moved to Utah in 1974, the disappearances followed. Law enforcement in Colorado, Idaho, and Florida would later piece together his trail, but it was clear that Bundy used state lines to his advantage, staying one step ahead of authorities. Despite the horrors that Bundy inflicted, survivors like Carol DeRanche played a vital role in bringing him to justice. In 1974, DeRanche managed to escape after Bundy lured her into his car under the guise of being a police officer. Her courage in recounting the attack and identifying Bundy helped police build their case against him. Another key witness, Nita Neary, saw Bundy leaving the Chi Omega house after the murders there. Her description of him helped place Bundy at the scene and strengthened the case against him. But the road to justice was fraught with near misses and dramatic escapes. Bundy's first arrest was August 16, 1975. He was pulled over in Granger, Utah for erratic driving. Inside his Volkswagen Beetle, police found burglary tools, including a ski mask, handcuffs, a crowbar, and rope. These items raised suspicion, leading investigators to link Bundy to several unsolved disappearances. On October 2, 1975, Carol DeRanche, who had escaped abduction by Bundy in 1974, identified him in a police lineup. Bundy was charged with aggravated kidnapping and assault, marking the beginning of his unraveling. On March 1, 1976, Bundy was convicted of kidnapping Carol DeRanche and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. This marked his first official criminal conviction, though authorities suspected him of far more heinous acts. Then, on June 7, 1977, while awaiting trial for Karen Campbell's murder, Bundy escaped by jumping from a courthouse window in Aspen, Colorado. Thankfully, he was recaptured 6 days later. Bundy's second escape was even more audacious. On December 30th, 1977, he sawed through the ceiling of his jail cell in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and fled. This time, he made his way to Florida, where his crimes escalated. Finally, on February 15th, 1978, Ted Bundy was captured in Pensacola, Florida, after being pulled over by Officer David Lee for driving a stolen car. This final arrest brought his reign of terror to an end, thanks to dogged police work and sheer determination. Bundy's trials were as infamous as his crimes. The 1979 trial for the Chi Omega murders was the first nationally televised trial in the U.S. Bundy, ever the narcissist, represented himself, turning the courtroom into his stage. Despite his attempts to manipulate the proceedings, forensic evidence, including bite mark analysis, sealed his fate. In 1980, Bundy was tried for the abduction and murder of Kimberly Leach. He was again convicted and sentenced to death. After nearly a decade of appeals, Bundy's execution was scheduled for January 24th, 1989. As the date approached, Bundy finally began confessing to his crimes, admitting to over 30 murders across multiple states. These confessions provided investigators with chilling details about his methods and motives. However, many believe that Bundy's sudden willingness to talk was a calculated move. Basically, he was just talking in an attempt to delay his execution by dangling the promise of information about possible undiscovered victims. On the morning of January 24th, Bundy was led to Florida's electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky. Witnesses described him as eerily calm, which was a stark contrast to the attention-seeking persona he had displayed during his trials. At 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was pronounced dead. Outside of the prison walls, a crowd had gathered, not to mourn, but to celebrate. Some held signs reading "Burn, Bundy, burn," while others lit fireworks and cheered. It was a rare and visceral public reaction to an execution. For many, his death brought a sense of closure to the horror that he had inflicted. Ted Bundy's crimes have been studied extensively by psychologists and criminal profilers, providing critical insights into the mind of a serial killer. Bundy was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and epitomized the traits of a psychopath. He had superficial charm, manipulative behavior, and a complete lack of empathy. His good looks and intelligence were weapons he used to disarm his victims, masking his horrific intentions. Bundy's case also revolutionized criminal investigations. The FBI's behavioral science unit studied Bundy to refine their profiling techniques, which have since become standard practices in cases involving serial offenders. Bundy's trial and its reliance on bite mark evidence was groundbreaking at the time, but it has since been scrutinized in light of advancements in forensic science, particularly DNA analysis. And now, bite mark analysis is largely considered to be junk science. Ted Bundy's execution on January 24th, 1989, marked the end of one of America's darkest chapters. His name remains infamous, but it's the stories of his victims, their dreams, their potential, and the lives that they could have lived that we must remember. They are the ones who truly matter in this story. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you're listening to or watching it right now. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Stay safe, and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!